The Jehovah's Witness religion teaches its members that they are temporary residents in this world. I would say that this is one of the most harmful teachings in the entire religion. Find out why on this week's episode of the Jehovah's podcast. Hello and welcome to the Jehovah's podcast. I'm your host Riley, a former Jehovah's Witness who left the religion in 2019. So 3 days ago here in the UK, we had a general election. And the outcome of that election is that we now have a new government and a new Prime Minister. Now, general elections in the UK happen approximately once every 5 years. But this one in particular was very significant for me because it was the very first general election that I have ever voted in. The previous general election happened in December of 2019, but I didn't vote in that one. And the reason for that is that I was still under the influence of the Jehovah's Witness religion. I say under the influence because technically I was no longer a Jehovah's Witness, but I was still a believer in the religion. And believers in the Jehovah's Witness religion do not vote. Now, there are a couple of reasons why Jehovah's Witnesses take this stance on politics. And the primary reason is because of this idea of political neutrality. They believe that Jehovah has set up his own government, which is currently ruling in heaven and will, at some time in the very near future, replace all the governments on the earth. So they believe that the way to show allegiance to God's government is by withholding any and all support from earthly governments. The second reason is because they believe that they are temporary residents in this world. Now, that's quite a strange phrase for someone who's not familiar with the Jehovah's Witness religion. So let's take a bit of time looking at where this phrase comes from and what it actually means. Jehovah's Witnesses draw this idea of temporary residency from Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 13. That scripture speaks about early Christians viewing themselves as being temporary residents in their land. And the religion interprets this as meaning that while Christians, true Christians, are physically in the world, they see themselves as being no part of it in a broader sense. And since the Jehovah's Witnesses are an apocalyptic religion, they believe that this world is passing away and a new world will take its place. So that's why they see this world and their place in it as being temporary. Now, if you've ever been a Jehovah's Witness or if you've ever associated with them and attended their meetings, you'll know how much the religion loves analogies, or as they call them in the religion, illustrations. I think it's fair to say, and please pardon the expression, that Jehovah's Witnesses have a huge, raging hard-on for analogies. If you can explain something with an analogy, then it's basically fact. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. They view analogies with almost the same reverence as they view scripture. So here is one that I heard at a circuit assembly to show how we should view our temporary residency in this world. So the circuit overseer was on the platform giving his talk, and he said, when you go on holiday, you arrive at your hotel room. You unpack your clothes. What's the first thing you do? Do you plumb in a new washing machine? Do you start redecorating the apartment? Of course not. And the reason why is because you don't actually live there. You know that you're just staying there for a short period of time. So making long-term plans in that situation is at best a waste of time and at worst utterly foolish. Now, on the surface, the comparison made in this analogy seems like a reasonable comparison to draw. I'm quite lucky to have done a lot of traveling in my life, and I have never redecorated or plumbed in a new washing machine in any hotel room or apartment I've ever stayed in. But here is where the analogy falls apart. Everyone who has ever been on vacation in the entire history of vacations has always come home. Their vacation eventually ended. So vacations are truly temporary. But the Jehovah's Witness religion has been on temporary vacation in this world for 110 years. In fact, it's been even longer than that. I just can't be bothered to go back any further than 1914. In what universe does it make sense to view 110 years, which is longer than most people's lifespans, as being a temporary period of time? Now imagine you're standing outside your house one morning and you see your neighbors packing up their car. Looks like they're going on a trip. So you speak to your neighbor and you say, "Oh, you're going away on holiday?" And they say, "Yeah, we're going away for a little while." "Oh, nice. How long are you going for?" "Oh, we'll be back in 110 years. What? Now, of course, that's a ridiculous scenario. So let's say they tell you they're going away for 50 years or 25 years or 5 years or even 1 year. Would you view that trip as being a holiday or a vacation? No, they're going somewhere else to live. If you move away from your home and spend upwards of 1 year in any other place, you weren't on vacation, you were living there. Now let's dispense with this ridiculous analogy. Putting all of that aside, there are Jehovah's Witnesses who were born, lived, grew old, and died in this religion, while all that time viewing themselves as being temporary residents in this world. How does that make any sense? How can you live your entire life from cradle to grave in a particular place and say that that was temporary? The short and simple answer is that you can't. Now, at the outset, I said that I believe this idea of temporary residency to be one of the most harmful ideas in the religion. And the reason I say that is because this idea actually stifles human potential. There's a real tangible cost to the Jehovah's Witnesses who believe this idea and live their life in accordance with it. Think of all the talents and skills and ambitions that have never been fully realized because the Jehovah's Witnesses who had those talents, skills, and ambitions thought and genuinely believed that pursuing them would be a waste of time. And this might even apply to you yourself. You might have a passion or a skill or an ambition that you sacrificed as a direct result of being in this religion. During my time as a JW, I've met artists, singers, musicians, authors, a playwright, and an acrobat, all of whom gave up their passions because they viewed themselves as being temporary residents in this world. When I first woke up from my indoctrination and realized that this wasn't the truth, one of the things that I became most concerned about initially was the environment. It suddenly dawned on me that looking after the environment actually matters, because I no longer had that safety net of thinking that Jehovah was going to come in, snap his fingers and make everything right again. So I started to care more about my local community and the impact that I was having on it. And I still do. But for my entire time as a Jehovah's Witness, which was 42 years, I didn't care about any of those things. We damaged the planet with too much plastic. Oh, that doesn't matter. Jehovah's going to fix that soon. We pollute the air with toxic fumes. Oh, that doesn't matter. Jehovah's going to fix that soon. Carbon emissions are making the planet hotter. Oh, that doesn't matter. Jehovah's going to fix all of that soon. Now, to be fair, there are only 8 million, roughly, Jehovah's Witnesses on the planet. So the impact on the environment that those 8 million people are going to have is negligible at best. But the truth is, if you firmly believe that a new world and a new planet essentially are imminent, then you're not going to care at all about what happens to this one. And that in itself is a harmful mentality to have. But this mentality isn't just about not caring about the world. It's also about not caring about one's own life in this world. I would argue that this idea of being temporary residents in this world causes Jehovah's Witnesses to place a lower value on their own lives because they don't see this life as being the real one. To them, the real life is the one that has been promised, or so they believe, to them in the new world. That's their real and permanent life. So this one means little to nothing. And it's an extremely sad thing to contemplate. Think of all the thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses who no doubt die every year after refusing life-saving medical treatment in the form of a blood transfusion. That kind of reckless self-sacrifice would not be possible if not for ideas like this. It's also true to say that Jehovah's Witnesses care very little about the lives of other people. As far as I know, the JW religion is registered as a charity in most countries where they operate, despite doing no charitable work whatsoever. You can search far and wide to the four corners of the earth, and you will not find a JW homeless shelter, soup kitchen, or food bank. There are none whatsoever. And you'll struggle to find individual Jehovah's Witnesses who donate to other charitable causes. Now, I'm not saying there are none. I'm sure there are a few, one or two here and there. But by and large, Jehovah's Witnesses do not donate to charities. And again, the reason for this is because they see this world, its problems, and its people as being temporary. So the costs of donating to charities far outweigh the benefits. This actually reminds me of an experience I had when I was a newly disfellowshipped person. I was on my lunch break from work and I went to get some food. I was on my way back to the office and there was someone in the street who was collecting for charities. So she approached me and she started explaining about her charity and asked me if I would like to make a donation. Now, I vividly remember this exchange, mostly for the reason that she was from Liverpool and she had the strongest Scouse accent I've ever heard. And the entire time I was trying really hard not to laugh. But as I said, I was disfellowshipped at this time. However, I still believed that the JW religion was the truth. I was physically out, but mentally in. So I refused her invitation to donate to her charity. And this is the reason I gave. I said that human beings are incapable of solving the world's problems in any meaningful way. So it's pointless even trying. It would be like sticking a plaster or a band-aid on a broken bone. Also, this world isn't going to be around for much longer. Jehovah God is going to bring about a new world which will genuinely fix all of humankind's problems. So it makes more sense to invest in that world as opposed to this one. Obviously, you can't see me as I'm relaying this experience, but I have my head in my hands, absolutely cringing over what I've just told you. But that is honestly what I said. But those sentiments I expressed are not unique to me. That is the typical opinion of most Jehovah's Witnesses. Speak to any former Jehovah's Witness, and I'm almost certain that they'll be able to relate to you an experience where either they themselves or someone they knew encountered a homeless person who was begging for money or food, and instead of rendering them that assistance, they gave them a Watchtower magazine. Jehovah's Witnesses genuinely believe that that is the best way to help someone in those kind of circumstances, because they see it as an investment in that person's long-term future. Again, because this world is temporary. So as I'm sure you can see by now, there are several layers to this idea of Jehovah's Witnesses being temporary residents in this world. But they pretty much all amount to taking this life, this world, and the people in it for granted, and failing to make a positive contribution to anything outside their own community. Having said that, I think it's important to stress that despite how harmful these ideas are, both to Jehovah's Witnesses and the communities in which they live, it has to be said that they are victims in all of this. They are victims of indoctrination instigated by an evil corporation masquerading as a religion. Those of us in the XJW community who engage in any type of activism often have the allegation levied against us that we hate Jehovah's Witnesses. Nothing could be further from the truth. We don't hate Jehovah's Witnesses as a people. We hate the organization that controls them. It's the organization that instills in them a callous disregard for their own lives, their own well-being, and the lives and well-being of others. All so that a group of 9 pampered old men in upstate New York can feel powerful. That's it for this week's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like, comment, subscribe, and if you're listening on a podcasting platform, please rate the podcast. All of these things really help to get this in front of as many listeners as possible. Thanks again for listening. I hope you have a great week.